What is up guys, Joe here, welcome back to my channel, and today we are back with more F1 2020 and of course the My Team series. And you can see as we're just going through setting up some activities quickly, in fact just 2 days between the first and second race. And talking of the first race, if you did miss the first race in Melbourne, Australia, go and check that one out before you watch this one. I'll leave a link in the top right. It was a decent start to our campaign and journey, hopefully, to the top of F1. You can also see we have almost 2,000 resource points to spend. I'm just going to try and spread that out on a few minor upgrades across a few different departments. We're very good in the chassis region due to my early kind of choices in that original interview. Our aerodynamics not very good though, so we need to work on that, as well as our durability, one of the worst teams there. So we're going to try and spread some upgrades around here, give some love to a few different departments. You can see that one will take a few races to come in, I think coming in time for China. You can also see we've risen to level 2 in the team acclaim, which does mean we can sign a secondary sponsor. You can see I'm scrolling through, taking a look at quite a few, and I'll be honest, I'm not going to try and say this, but we go for this sponsor. It looks quite nice, quite a simple font. I quite like the design, and you can see all they want is to complete a race with no DNF, so I think we can do that pretty comfortably. It's not one of the very top sponsors I could have gone for in terms of income, but I think we can achieve that pretty consistently. And quickly, you will also notice here I did change the logo to a custom one. Obviously playing on PC, I have the ability to do that. And now heading to the Grand Prix weekend, you did see briefly there, we do have a dry race and quali, so no surprises being in Bahrain. And you can see vehicle comparison, no real changes here. I think Ferrari did make some big inroads on Mercedes and Red Bull as we head into practice one. But yeah, we're just slightly off those mid-tier teams still, ahead of just Haas and Williams. So hopefully we do have a little bit of pace around here. Should be an interesting one for sure.
Carl probably mentioned the new parts that have come in from the factory. Well, they're all fitted and good to go. I hope they do the trick.
Cheers, Jeff. Great to see that our new upgrades have come in without failure right there. I think it was just a single minor upgrade on the chassis that we did pre-Australia. So good to see that has come in with no failures. You can see quickly, I'm going to show a little bit of practice. And guys, I'm not going to show practice going forward. I think it can get a bit repetitive for you guys to watch. But I'm going to do this in the background before each race. Try and get as many resource points as possible as quickly. You can see that corner right there. I really struggle with that downhill corner. One of the hardest corners in F1 to perfect, I would say. But yeah, picking up some good resource points in practice. I think we finished 18th in P1, so not too bad. Showing a little bit of pace, picking up a decent amount of resource points. Let's get into quali.
Engine fired, we're set.
Here we go then, kicking off Q1 at Bahrain. And guys, I'm going to say this right now, I'm not too good at Bahrain, it would seem, compared to AI. We're still running 100 AI, and I've played a few races ahead at the time of recording this commentary, and I will say that I'm slowly improving at the game, and as I do that, we will increase the AI. We're not going to keep it too low to the point where as I improve as a driver, and the car improves of course, I'm not going to keep it on too low difficulty, hopefully, so it stays at the right level all the way to 110 at some point in the future, hopefully. But you can see getting our first run in Q1, and it was a very poor lap, putting us behind Latifi and Guan Yu Zhou. So we're going to need to go out again right here, and we should be able to go a little bit faster at least this time. Otherwise, we're starting at the very back of the grid, which would be very disappointing at this Grand Prix. You can see gaining a little bit of time through sector 1. I really struggle with putting the power down right there. Coming into sector 2, you can see that difficult corner again, locking up a bit more aggressive that time. We do gain a lot of time on the exit, up to about 3/10 up on our previous lap. Now coming into the final corner, but we're not going to gain enough time to go through. You can see Grosjean, a 1:27.9. We're improving by half a second right here, and we go 20 seconds on the grid behind Latifi, behind Guan Yu Zhou, and we'll be starting from the back in Bahrain.
We're here again then at a circuit famous for its stunning visuals and thrilling battles for glory. Who will take the spotlight in the Bahrain Grand Prix today? There's no shortage of passing opportunities around the 3.36 miles of the Bahrain International Circuit, with the best at turn 1 of course, and then another soon into turn 4. 15 corners here, 6 to the left and 9 to the right, and we could see 1 or 2 flat spots into the tight left-hander of turn 10. Now, Anthony Davidson, I wonder, might we be in for some early pit stops today from the midfield teams, all trying to put some pressure on or disrupting things for the leaders up front?
If you're in the middle of the pack, you know, you got your own race to run, I don't think they're going to be thinking about causing trouble up front. However, closer to the head of the pack, don't be surprised to see some split strategies. If you're running second and third, for example, bringing one car in for an undercut while leaving the other one out there longer can put a lot of pressure on the leader and maybe force them into an error.
Let's run you through the driver grid order for today's exciting race. An immense lap from Lewis Hamilton yesterday puts him on pole position, and it's Valtteri Bottas that completes the front row. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Leclerc, Vettel, Sergio Perez, and Verstappen, Albon, Stroll, Ricciardo, and Carlos Sainz. Norris, Kvyat, Esteban Ocon, and Gasly, Magnussen, Raikkonen, George Russell, and Roman Grosjean. Giovinazzi, Joe, Latifi, and Iceman. It's almost time for the lights to go out, so let's head down to the track and get this Grand Prix underway.
So taking a look at the strategy, first thing I always do is lower the fuel load. I like to start at minus a lap to maybe even 2 laps on the fuel so I can save some throughout the race, lift and coast throughout. And you can see setting up our strategy right here, we're going to actually start on the harder tyre and maybe run a similar tactic to Melbourne where we try to go further on the first stint and try and be quicker to the end of the race. So let's try that again right here, try an alternate strategy, because starting from the back of the grid, we're going to need to try something different if we want any chance of moving up the grid, I feel. However, we move to 5 red lights for the Bahrain Grand Prix, and 5 red lights are out. We are underway here in Bahrain. It's a decent launch, good launch for Joe up ahead, goes to the right of Giovinazzi, but he cuts him off, so Joe has to slow somewhat. We switch to the middle and actually the outside coming into turn 1, following Latifi. He's going very, very slowly, so I try and flick the car round the outsides of the Williams, and we pull that off nicely actually, moving all the way up to 16th position in turn 1 right now. Esteban Ocon coming very aggressively. We try and squeeze him a bit. He doesn't quite commit to that corner though, so we just follow the Alfa Romeo of Giovinazzi through in 16th place. Very good start to the race, so we'll take that for sure. However, on this harder compound, we're going to be very slow, of course, compared to most of our rivals, at least on paper, as we take a look at the car, looking very, very nice from the outside, I must say.
Keep pushing. Let's capitalise on that first lap.
Cheers, Jeff, and it's going to be very important to try and stay with Antonio Giovinazzi right here in the first few laps, but you can see on board with Ocon, we run very wide there at that difficult hairpin, and Ocon up our inside right now, using a little ERS to try and get back ahead of the Frenchman, but this fighting is causing a lot of damage to both our races at this early stage, and Ocon sweeps up the inside as I go way too much on that very dangerous curb that can spin you so easily, that curb, and it's been a very poor middle sector right there, making a few mistakes, and we're dropping off the back of Esteban Ocon. However, George Russell is fighting now with Giovinazzi and Ocon. George Russell doing very well to start this race in the top 15 in that, of course, very poor Williams car, locking up terribly into that hairpin. And the difference in grip between these hards and the softs I was used to in quali is absolutely massive. I am feeling it right now. As you see, Giovinazzi and George Russell still side by side, and that is allowing me to close right up to the back of these guys, and we almost go right into the back and through the back of Esteban Ocon, but you can see these guys really battling. George Russell really dropping off. It must be the Alpha Tauri of Danny Kvyat up the road, as we have Gasly just behind. But here we go, Giovinazzi defending from Esteban Ocon. It's all happening ahead of us right now as Ocon going around the outside of the Italian. We have the perfect view of this. However, we want some of this action right now. We try and follow the Frenchman through. Giovinazzi with a very poor exit, and we're boxed in somewhat, flicked to the inside of the roads. Do we have the momentum? I took my foot off the throttle somewhat, very, very slightly, as we were boxed in right there. But we do get Giovinazzi. In the end, we back out of Ocon. He's clearly the faster driver at this stage, and you can see right here, really struggling with the exit on that corner, and Giovinazzi gets a great run on us right here. We go to the outside of the track after squeezing Giovinazzi, but he gets us into that corner. I think it's turn 4 right there, so not looking good for us. We really don't have much pace right now. I'm really struggling in the traction zones on this tyre compared to the AI, it would seem. So maybe not the best decision to start on the hards, as we're one of the slower drivers anyway. We're really feeling it as we take another look at that action-packed back straight right there. We flipped the car to the inside. Ocon covered us off. I flicked it back to the outsides, but George Russell, the winner in the end, staying ahead of all of these guys. You can see on board the back of George Russell's rear wing. We just didn't quite have the momentum after it was a split second I was off the throttle, but that was all the difference right there. As you see, the front of the race, the Mercedes haven't really got the gap you would expect them to have at this stage. The Ferraris and Red Bulls keeping them honest, as Pierre Gasly now up our insides on lap 4 of the race. The same corner that Giovinazzi overtook us. And we're just going to have to settle in behind the Frenchman right now. I'm really struggling at that corner to get the car turned in, it would seem. And Gasly clearly quicker than us on that medium tyre compared to our hards. And I'm struggling just to stay with these guys. I'm really pushing on these hards, and you can see onto lap 5 again. Just can't get it turned in out that corner for some odd reason. You can see Gasly 1.5 seconds already up the road just onto the next lap, just after overtaking us. So it's looking like a difficult Grand Prix is ahead of us right now. I'm really just second guessing every move right now on these hard tyres. Can't really get any confidence going in the car, and that is allowing Kimi Raikkonen and even Nick Latifi to close right up to the back of us right now. So onto the end of lap 5, start of lap 6, Kimi Raikkonen now onto our tail, and we've dropped out of DRS of Gasly, so we have absolutely no chance right there. We're going to have to just try and stay with Kimi. Hopefully he can drag us up to that group ahead, because when it comes to raw pace, I'm clearly struggling at this stage. I just need to try and stay with these guys, not maybe fight them too much, and just try and get them towards the end of the race. As we take a look to a battle at the front of the race right now, Charles Leclerc getting ahead of his teammate Seb Vettel right there. And Vettel was actually in P3 to start this race. However, he comes back around the outsides of Leclerc, but Leclerc keeps it at the insides as we have this wonderful helicopter shot. And what a move that is by Charles Leclerc, going up into P4, I believe that is, ahead of Vettel in P5, and Verstappen now ahead of both Ferraris, with the Mercs now stretching away at the front of the race. But at this stage you can see the Ferraris and those guys on the softer tyres are now pitting for the first time, and that was Seb Vettel coming out just behind me, and that absolute train of cars now forming behind me. You can see I haven't been able to stay with Kimi, however he's just a few seconds up the road. Charles Leclerc does come out just ahead of us, as you see Seb Vettel, who was in last place, making the move on my teammate. We have Sergio Perez now coming out the pits after his first stop, and the Ferraris and the Racing Point of Sergio Perez. This is for genuine position because we both have one more stop to make.
Okay, gap ahead is 2.3 seconds.
Cheers, Jeff. As you see Leclerc, of course, cruising away from us. I'm unable to stay with the Ferrari as more drivers. Alex Albon now exiting the pit lane, and Vettel really has been caught in this train of cars right behind me. You can see on the mini-map at the bottom, it's a massive train of cars with a mixture of guys we were fighting with at the beginning of the race, and now some of the leaders who have now stopped for the first time in this Grand Prix. And Albon all over my gearbox. I'm struggling to get the car turned in at every single corner, understeering so much, and Albon must be having an absolute nightmare stuck behind me. He is clearly at least a few seconds quicker per lap than me as he tries to go round the outside into the hairpin, and I really back out of that. That will cost us both a lot of time if we try and go in there side by side. So I let Albon go, try and stay with him, but of course he goes straight up to the back of Leclerc. Same with Vettel now on lap 10. Vettel up our insides, and no point fighting the Ferrari. He is clearly a lot quicker than me. As we have yellow flags here on lap 10, P15 in this race. You can see it's a car just up the roads, and you can see it's a Ferrari of Charles Leclerc out of the race. And we have a virtual safety car. Okay, so this is a very interesting point of the race, of course. You can see Leclerc retiring, just getting out of the way of his teammate right there, as you see that massive train of cars right behind me.
This lap then, come into the pits at the end of this lap.
You can see I'm going to box here, guys. Lap 10, we're on the hards, which of course do have a long way to go in the race. this is a good opportunity, I feel, to get rid of this terrible compound that I'm really struggling on. So we go into the pit lane, and just as we enter the pits, the track goes green, the VSC ends, and that is an absolute nightmare. I thought if we could do a quick pit stop, almost a splash and dash, obviously, from the refueling days, but it's not going to happen because as soon as we entered the pits, the VSC ended. So I was really banking on the fact that everyone else would be going slowly and we almost get a free or cheap pit stop. But we come out the pits right now on the medium tyre, and we're 18 seconds behind Sainz and Lance Stroll up the road. So we're really in no man's land right here. So yeah, guys, really, as soon as I made this pit stop, I realised it was the wrong call. As we take a look though at the head of the race, and Lando Norris currently leading the race ahead of the other guys, the Mercedes that have now stopped. And Norris is one stopping in this race, and you can see he's clearly the lead of those guys on the one stop. So it'll be interesting to see how Lando Norris's race progresses. As a few laps later, you can see those guys we were battling have now come in for their first stop. As Raikkonen, we have gained some time on Kimi Raikkonen, and we will go around the outsides of turn 1. So we do at least jump Kimi Raikkonen here on lap 14, but again, a very poor exit out of that corner. I really struggle with it, I will be honest with you guys, as Kimi Raikkonen diving up the insides of us right now. Can we hold it? We really struggled to do that. Can I get a switch back on Kimi? But no, we're just going to let him go for now, try and maybe get him in a few moments. Can we dive up the inside right here? But the door does close on us right there. Very naughty little look. I think that was an accident waiting to happen. But these guys, now on the harder compound tyre, I'm expecting to be a lot faster than these guys at this stage of the race. But you can see Kimi Raikkonen now over a second ahead of me.
The car in front is a second a lap faster, 1 second.
And there you go, Jeff backing up that point right there. I seem to have the pace on George Russell and Grosjean behind, but Raikkonen has cruised up the roads. I cannot stay with him as we now skip onto lap 21. Our pit window does open, and yeah, guys, this race is going down the drain very quickly. We're in P17. We of course need to make another pit stop because we started on the hards expecting to go to around lap 18 or 17 and then jump onto the mediums for the remainder of the race. However, we of course did make the change onto the medium compound under what I thought would be VSC conditions. Of course, they didn't end up being VSC conditions. Maybe I should have jumped out of the pit lane, thinking back to that moment. However, we clearly don't have the pace at this stage. As we take a look now back to Lando Norris, this is for position for P2 in this race. Valtteri Bottas up the inside. So Lando Norris now back into P3. Can he maybe hold on for a podium though at this Grand Prix? However, our mediums are now starting to fall off a cliff. Grosjean and Russell even cruising up to the back of us, and lap 22, it's time to box. We're not going to make it to the end on this compound. Let's chuck on the soft tyres and see what we can do right here. And this Grand Prix clearly not working out for us, guys. We're going to come out in P21, last of the remaining runners. And yeah, I think all we have left to fight for really is a fastest lap. So I'm going to try and save some fuel, save a little bit of ERS on this lap. You can see Latifi 16 seconds up the roads. Really, it's a mixture of things that have gone wrong in this race. Lack of pace overall and a very poor strategy choice by myself. But here we go, lap 24. This will be our fastest lap attempt. You can see we're going to try and absolutely hammer it around this track. And I can tell you at this stage, the fastest lap of the race is a 1:29.7. That's what we have to beat. I think Valtteri Bottas has that fastest lap. So 1:29.7 is the goal. Over 3 seconds quicker than we've done at any stage of this race. And you can see on this softer compound, I seem to be a lot more comfortable around this track, of course. You can see the gap to Latifi closing dramatically. We're not going to catch him anyhow, so it doesn't really matter. But on this soft compound, we do seem to have the pace. So maybe I should have gone for 2 softs and then maybe a medium stint to the end of this race. But with 1.8 seconds up on our best right now, can we maybe get that fastest lap of the Grand Prix? I know you don't get the point if you don't finish in the top 10. However, we're fighting for pride right now, trying to get our first fastest lap of our career, which would be a very nice way to end what has been a dreadful weekend for myself and the team as a whole, really, with Joe just 2 places ahead of me. But we crossed the line, setting a purple final sector 2.8 better than our best, but we just missed out on the fastest lap. A 1:30 flat was our fastest lap right there. Bottas does beat it on the final lap of the Grand Prix, just 4/10 ahead of mine, so we weren't too far away from that fastest lap. Would have been nice, a nice consolation. We have closed up to Latifi. We're not going to get him into the final straight. It's a terrible, terrible weekend here in Bahrain.
Alright, race over. Take care of the car on the way in.
So, another fantastic victory for the Silver Arrows. So, Anthony, what made the difference out there today?
I think a large part of the result comes down to temperament. They were able to keep their heads when everyone around them was losing theirs, and that's allowed them to get the best out of the car, to maximise the strategy, and to stay out of trouble.
After an excellent performance at the Grand Prix, I'm sure there'll be plenty of celebrations tonight amongst the Mercedes team, and they certainly deserve it.
So guys, Hamilton and Bottas dominate proceedings here in Bahrain. It was Verstappen jumping ahead of Norris for P3, but Lando Norris holding on for a very, very nice P4, and he pulled off that one stop exactly how I intended. That's what I wanted to happen in this Grand Prix, us to kind of gain track position and then hold it to the end of the race. Didn't have the pace for it, made a bad call under the VSC, and our race was down the drain right there. I could have pushed to maybe catch Latifi and Zhou ahead of me a bit more on that final stint, because when I was on the softs, I really did seem to have some decent pace around this track, but as soon as I went onto the hards or even the mediums, I just didn't seem to have the same grip. I really was understeering into a lot of those medium speed corners. So yeah, not a good start, guys. Still no points for myself, still no points for the team. We're gaining some acclaim though, very slightly, of course. Not a massive gain after this pretty poor Grand Prix weekend. In fact, probably a nightmare Grand Prix weekend, I would say. We gain a little bit of cash in the bank, but that really is little consolation for what has been a horrible race weekend. So guys, a horrendous weekend in Bahrain comes to an end, thankfully, as we take a quick look at the race highlights. The first lap was great. We made up about 6 positions, I think, off the first kind of sector of the race, but it was downhill from there, making mistakes on the first lap, allowing Ocon past. And yeah, we just didn't quite have the pace, as well as a very poor strategy call, pitting under the VSC. Even if it was under VSC conditions, I doubt it would have been a good strategy call. We should have kept the track position there on the harder compound. But yeah, I thought it would be a good decision because I was really struggling on that harder compound. I just wanted to get rid of those tyres basically, and as the VSC came out, it's more a heat of a moment decision. Maybe I should have thought about it a bit more, played it a bit more cautious. It was an aggressive strategy move, of course. Didn't come off in the end. And I will say, guys, I have played up to the end of Zandvoort, I think I mentioned earlier, but we definitely have some more competitive racing coming up in the next few episodes where we do have some decent pace. We're on 100 AI difficulty. I think the AI are very quick around Bahrain. I've heard rumours they're very quick around Bahrain, so as we progress through the circuits, we'll even start to bump up the AI towards 110, which is the end goal, of course. Anyhow, guys, all that's left for me to say in this one is I hope you enjoyed this very poor race weekend. The next one will be better as we head to Vietnam for the first Vietnamese Grand Prix. Hope you enjoyed it, guys. Drop a like on the video if you did. Subscribe to my channel if you're new. I'll see you guys in the next one.